Boy Who Swam with Piranhas by Oliver Jeffers. Never read it, but it was recommended, so we'll have a little look. Number 1, factory. Here's a question. How would you like it if somebody in your house, your Uncle Ernie for instance, decided to turn it into a fish canning factory? How would you like it if there were buckets of pilchards and tubs of mackerel everywhere you looked? What if a shoal of sardines was swimming in the bath? What if your Uncle Ernie kept on making more and more machines? Machines for chopping the heads off, cutting the tails off, getting the guts out. Machines for cleaning them, boiling them and squashing them into cans. Can you imagine the racket? Can you picture the mess? And just think about the stink. What if your Uncle Ernie's machines grew so big that they took over every room? Your bedroom, for instance, so that you had to sleep in a cupboard. What if your Uncle Ernie said you couldn't go to school anymore, but had to stay at home and help him can the fish? Sounds good? But what if you, instead of going to school, you had to start work every morning at 6 o'clock on the dot and got no holidays? And you never saw your old pals? Would you like it? Would you heck? Well, neither did Stanley Potts. Stanley Potts, just an ordinary kid living an ordinary life in an ordinary house in an ordinary street. Then, bang, life turned balmy. Happened overnight. One day, there they were. Stan, his Uncle Ernie, his Auntie Annie, living in a lovely little terraced house in Fish Key Lane. Next day, wallop. Pilchards, mackerel, sardines and total balminess. Now, Stan really did love his Uncle Ernie and his Auntie Annie. Ernie was Stan's dad's brother. They'd been wonderful to him ever since Stan's dad had died in that awful accident and his mum had died of a broken heart. They'd been like a brand new mum and dad. But once the balminess started, it seemed it would never stop. And pretty soon, it would all get far too much to bear. Ooh, the factory. It all started when Simpson's shipyard shut. Simpson's had been on the river since the year ... Blokes that lived by the river had been working at Simpson's since the year ... Stan's dad had worked there until the accident. Uncle Ernie had worked there since he was a lad, just like his brother and their dad and their dad's dad and their dad's dad. Then, kapow, it was all over. They made cheaper ships and better ships in Korea and Taiwan and China and Japan. So Simpson's gates were slammed shut and the workers were given a few quid each and told to go away, and the demolition gangs moved in. No more jobs for blokes like Uncle Ernie. But blokes like Uncle Ernie were proud and hard-working, and they had families to care for. Some found jobs in Perkins Plastics packaging factory, for instance, or answering the telephones for the Common Benefit Insurance and Financial Society, or filling shelves at Stuffco, or showing folks around the Great Industrial Heritage Museum. Special exhibit, super ship shaped at Simpson's shipyard since the year ... Some blokes just turned glum and shuffled around the streets all day, or hung about on street corners, or got ill and started to fade away. A few turned to the bottle, a few turned to crime, and a couple ended up in the clink. But some, like Stan's uncle, Mr. Ernest Potts, had big, big plans. A couple of months after they'd flung him out of Simpson's, Ernie was standing with Stan and Annie on the riverbank. The cranes and warehouses were being torn down. Fences and walls were getting smashed. There was wreckage all around. Wharves and jetties were being ripped apart. The air was filled with the noise of wrenching and ripping, banging and smashing. The earth trembled and juddered under their feet. The river was all wild waves and turbulence. The wind whipped in from the distant sea. Seagulls screeched like they'd never seen anything like it. Ernie had been yelling and groaning and moaning for weeks. Now he sighed and grunted and cursed and spat. The world's gone mad, he yelled into the wind. It's gone absolutely bonkers. He stamped his feet. He shook his fists at the sky. But you'll not beat me, he yelled. No, you'll not get the better of Ernest Potts. I'm going to stop it there at page 16. We will carry on tomorrow.